Okay, Stairwell Part 2. This is priming and painting and finishing this thing. If you missed Part 1, I'd recommend going back and seeing that, or else this is not going to mean quite as much. You didn't see where it started. So do that. There's going to be a link somewhere in the show notes. And if you're just starting at Part 2, I'm Noah Cantor. This is Advice from a Young Tradesman TV, the partner YouTube channel of the podcast Advice from a Young Tradesman. And just like video 1, this one is also brought to you by the PCA. I appreciate them for sponsoring content like this to help contractors help other contractors. Much appreciated. So without further ado, let's jump into the priming and the painting and getting this thing finished. All right, time to prime. Let's talk about that. So again, all of the wallpaper that's gonna come off has been removed, edges sanded, the plaster is nice and stabilized and clean, and now we prime. You cannot use a normal water-based primer on damage like this. It'll just bubble everything and start delaminating everything. You need a specialty primer or just a generic oil-based primer. Just pretty much anyone will work. I'm choosing to do some of the specialty ones because they're a little easier to apply and a lot less heady in an enclosed space. It's Vermont in the winter. We don't want to open these windows. So 2 really common ones. I have the most experience with guards. This stuff has never failed. It is excellent. This is basically the Sherwin-Williams equivalent of it. I'm using this today, largely because that was the store I was driving by on the way here. Both of those are thin, they are clear, they penetrate all of these problem surfaces and calcify it so that it doesn't bubble up, and it gives you a nice stable layer. It's a really good barrier coating. I'm gonna show you what it looks like as they're going on. This is a high nap roller. I want to spread a lot of this stuff out. You can put it on pretty liberally. I already cut in. So I back roll this more than most other products, just because I really want to work it into all those surfaces. You'll notice I'm not digging into those yet with this. I will do those with a junk brush after, because there is still loose plaster bits in there. They will wreck a nice brush, but you do want to calcify those so that when you're putting Durabond in there, it's not trying to bond to loose plaster edges. So I will go back and get everything with this after. In addition to sealing up the crumbly plaster edges, this step also seals up the old lath so that it pulls less moisture out of the Durabond. And this is just a little time lapse of me applying, again, really liberal saturating coat, working it in a whole lot. And nice thing, it looks wet, so despite the fact that it's clear, it's easy to keep track of where you're going. All right, so you'll probably notice erratic rolling pattern. That's because it doesn't really matter. Finished strokes, sheen doesn't count on this. You're just loading it on there. So let's see how it went. And what we're looking for are no bubbles. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Now occasionally some will still happen. And I'm trying to find one to show you what to do in that case. Here's one. Do we see it? Yep, there it is. Okay, so they're hard to spot when they dry. So you basically just chase it to its edge and then roll over it again. Sometimes little bubbles will happen, then disappear. You can mud over it. They never pop back. Sometimes they pop back a little with the first coat of mud. So it's not 100%, but like 97% is still better than removing all of this wallpaper that no one's ever really gonna touch. It just has to look nice and be stable. So there's a really good solution. And I'm gonna finish the rest of this stairwell now and check in after. Okay, little update. So things went a little haywire during the priming step in the stairwell. Basically what happened was all of this pattern top layer wallpaper basically delaminated from this kind of nice palatial gardenscape pattern, right? Right when I started putting the primer on, it just started bubbling up and delaminating. Now, that stuff was checked with a putty knife. I made sure it was great. Water, most wallpaper removers wouldn't even budge this stuff. The primer that was supposed to keep it on. So what I did was I got my knives out and I just started removing it. Lost about a half a day there. If you think about it big picture, still ahead of the curve compared to if I was removing all of this manually. So gotta be ready for setbacks in projects this big and this old. But yeah, so that's what happened. At this point, the wallpaper is stabilized. Everything that was gonna come off has come off, and I sealed that lower layer in again. And today I started Durabonding the really, really deep pockets, because the next step, really the last step, is a full skim coat and just making everything look pretty. So that is what happened, and I'm not sure if there's enough light up here, but let's see. Yeah, you can kind of see that sheen is the primer locking everything in, and all these dull spots are Durabond. Just curing up, just getting the coats on. So next week is gonna see building coats up, stabilizing. All right, slightly out of order, but forgive me. This is what putting on the first coat of Durabond looked like here. I really wanted to get a key-in coat just to get all those plaster gaps filled up and just get the edges bonded really well. This is why I primed the lath as well, just so that the moisture in the Durabond I just mixed up isn't sucked into the wood, because that could cause some cracks. This is what it looked like when it was mostly dry. With Durabond, you can apply the second coat to mostly dry coats beneath it, and that is what I did just to get multiple coats on in one day. And I was using some 90 there for 2 coats in a day. And another little trick I did here was to spray foam the corners before I embedded my paper tape in it, just so, again, I could get multiple coats on in a day. This house isn't well insulated and it's winter in Vermont, so this helps. All right, this was another really important step that we did. So a lot of this plaster was in pretty decent shape, but some spots were a little softer than others. And if we were gonna retain it, I wanted to make sure that it was the strongest it could be on the places where it was likely to catch an impact from, life, kids, tables, moving, whatnot. So this is 36-inch fiberglass mesh, and it has an adhesive back, and we basically applied it to the wall on the lower spots of it, where again those impacts will happen, just so that those impacts don't cause really big crumbling events in the future. It stays isolated. So here's a little pan in the light. As you can see, it's just like that fiber tape that we all use. Nice sticky back, and we just put it on the lower parts of the wall to really shore it up well. All right, and now we embed it. I'm just using red top pre-mix mud, no Durabond or anything like this at this scale. And this is pretty simple. We all know how to embed tape. It's just on a larger level. The thing we had to really work to be careful about was that we didn't cause wrinkles in those big sheets, and we didn't scuff up the edges so the fibers turned proud and turn into little nubs we had to deal with later. But we kind of took it slow, a little slower than a normal skim coat would go, just to be careful about that stuff. But overall, just a nice embed coat got this thing in place and ready for the next skim. All right, I want to do a little update. The skim coat is finished. Last you saw, we were embedding the mesh fabric up there, and that went up here, basically every low space. And then the walls got 2 full skim coats. I really loaded it on because these walls are wonky. There was wallpaper to go around, so 2 big coats. Then I used my Festool ETS 150 with Abranet Mesh 150 grit mesh sanding discs on it to flush this all out. And what you're seeing here is everything sanded down and 1 more prime coat of guards. And as you can see behind me, a few bubbles are still happening. These were the last spots though. So before I did the guards, I just scraped those And you know, as you can see, no more bubbles. It's kind of a thing where they're gonna keep happening for a while, and you just gotta keep chasing them. So to catch this up, I'm just gonna use some Durabond, skim it, and then this whole thing is actually gonna get another finish coat of primer, just because the guards doesn't totally seal in this raw mud well, just because of how thin it is. So I'm gonna put some builder solution, a really high build surfacer on this, just to really seal it in, because after all this work, I really want these walls to have uniform porosity, which will make the top coat glow. So a little bit more prep work, seal it in with another coat of primer, and then we are doing ceiling, then walls. So this is the home stretch. Prep is all but done, and yeah, it's looking great. All right, quick little tip thing I like to do when I cut in ceilings. Ceilings are generally really flat or dead flat or chalky, and the brush doesn't glide well on it. The brush doesn't get a lot of mileage. So what I like to do is take a 6-inch mini roller and just load a ton of paint on there. And then you see me using the brush. That is just to get any excess out of the corner and the top of the wall. Final coat of primer done. Again, the second one is just to seal everything in there and create a super even porosity across the entire wall, because even porosity in the primer and the substrate translates to even porosity with the finish coat. Sheen is one of the things that people innately look at, even if they don't know, when they're judging the quality of a paint job. They don't know anything about painting. They're looking at crisp lines, even sheen. Really nice prime coats give us that even sheen as long as the top coat's put on well. I'm using some emerald matte here. They wanted a matte just because it's a kind of a historic house and a historic setting. Anything more sheeny than that would look a little off. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'll take you up a quick, yeah, okay. So what you can see there is a nice thick built up layer of primer that is scuffed nice and even, and yeah. So some top coats are next. One little trick I'm doing here to make sure we have perfect, beautiful cut lines against the trim is, with all that mudding, there were some kind of irregular lines. If the trim had space behind it, there was some mud in some places and not in others, so there were gaps. So what we want to do is we want to tape a perfect line against the edge of this trim, and what you're going to see next is caulking behind it. The caulking is going to lock in this 3M Purple Tape's Edge Lock technology. It's going to fill those gaps you can see right there, and it's paintable, so it's going to allow us to fill those gaps, paint it, and if any caulking bleeds through past this tape, it's clear, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, we're using the Sherwin 950A Clear. Just a thin bead, you know, we're not trying to fill too much space back here. And a really important note on this part is that I am really wiping just about everything off, because you do not want to bridge the wall to the tape here, because then you will just rip out what you were trying to make look nice, and it's going to be all jagged and gross. So you really want to get just about all of it flush, only where it's supposed to be. And if you do that well, look at how nice and crisp of a line that is. That is perfect. That's exactly what the eye wants to see. You can tell that it didn't bridge because it is not pulling anything. The line isn't jagged. You can tell nothing is tearing. It is just flush. So that is a job well done right there. Okay, it's a wrap. Let's go through it. Start with the downstairs. Nice flat ceilings. All cleared out. Again, this color is porcelain. It's a Sherwin-Williams color in emerald matte. It looks so clean. I think this color looks excellent next to the woodwork. It's simple, it's tasteful, but it works. Look at that. One thing I love about this is, can you see the natural undulations in the walls? These walls are 201 years old, and you know what? They shouldn't be flat. They should be super stable. The sheen should be even, porosity nice. You saw me work really hard on that, but they shouldn't be flat. And this is perfect. Just a little bit of waviness. Just a little bit. But that is just perfect. That's character there. Whenever I do a restoration like this, I try to preserve some character, you know, as long as I know the client wants it, but they did. So yeah, this one was a really rewarding turnaround. I love how this went. I know I covered a lot in these videos, so thank you for watching if you made it this far. If you have any specific questions about the process, products, whatever, leave them in the comments section. Likes and subscriptions help a lot. And if you want to get in touch in a better way, Advice from Young Tradesmen on Instagram is where I hang out most of the time. So thanks again.